The worn but meticulously kept apartment hummed with the quiet rhythm of the Alani family's life. Sunlight, fractured by the grimy panes of a tall window, striped across the threadbare rug, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stale air. In a corner, a small, polished wooden table bore the aroma of cumin and cilantro from Layla's simmering stew, mingling with the faint, sweet scent of jasmine tea. Vibrant, hand-embroidered textiles, heirlooms from a distant land, draped over sparse furniture, splashes of defiant color against the peeling paint of the walls. It was a space that spoke not of abundance, but of resilience, of love meticulously woven into every threadbare cushion and polished surface. 8-year-old Lena sat cross-legged on the floor, a thin finger tracing intricate, swirling patterns on the condensation of the window pane. Her imagination, a vast, boundless landscape, transformed the grimy view of the crumbling building complex into a majestic castle, its turrets reaching for the gray sky. She hummed softly, a tune her grandmother used to sing, lost in her own vibrant world. Her parents, Amir and Layla, watched her from the tiny kitchen, their gazes meeting over the bubbling pot. A quiet understanding passed between them, a shared dream of stability, a safe haven for their daughter in this new, often unforgiving land. Their hopes were not spoken aloud, but etched in the lines around Amir's tired eyes, in the gentle curve of Layla's ever-busy hands. One blustery Saturday afternoon, a biting wind rattled the old windows. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, a woman whose solitude hung heavy in the quiet hallways, suffered a bad fall just outside her door. She lay there, frail and disoriented, until Lena, returning from the communal laundry room, discovered her. Without hesitation, Lena called for her parents. Amir, despite his own exhaustion from a double shift, gently scooped Mrs. Henderson up, carrying her back to her apartment. Layla, with a natural grace, brewed her a strong, sweet tea and applied a soothing balm to her bruised arm, all while Lena sat by her side, holding her trembling hand and telling her stories of the brave knights in her imaginary castle. Later that evening, as the last of the stew warmed the family's bellies, Amir noticed the flickering of the communal light fixture in the hallway, a persistent problem that no one else seemed to care about. He sighed, then retrieved his worn toolbox. "Papa, why do you always fix what others ignore?" Lena asked, watching him from the doorway. Amir smiled, ruffling her hair. "Because, little bird," he said, his voice soft but firm, "a good neighbor makes the whole street brighter. We are a part of this place, and we make it better, little by little." This quiet act, fixing what was broken not for gain but for the communal good, resonated deeply. It demonstrated their inherent goodness and strong community values, even when facing hardship, solidifying the reader's support for the Alani family. Beneath a stack of old utility bills in the bottom drawer of Amir's worn bedside table lay a small, intricately carved wooden box. It was smooth to the touch, its dark wood gleaming faintly in the dim light. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay 2 items: a single tarnished brass key, heavy and oddly shaped, and a yellowed handwritten letter, its script looping elegantly in a language Lena didn't understand. Amir would occasionally retrieve the box, his thumb brushing over the key's cold surface, his brow furrowed in a mix of longing and bewilderment. He would pull out the letter, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar words, a wistful, almost melancholic expression on his face. He never spoke of it, not to Layla, not to Lena. It was a private relic, a silent question mark in his carefully constructed life. This recurring detail, the old brass key and the mysterious letter, hinted at a forgotten legacy, a connection to the building complex that was far more profound than simple tenancy. It sowed the seeds of mystery, laying the groundwork for the later revelation of their unexpected inheritance and true deeper connection to the property. It was a quiet secret, a dormant power waiting to be awakened in the heart of their unassuming home. The fragile sense of security the Alani family had painstakingly built, a delicate tapestry woven with hope and quiet resilience, was about to be ripped apart. The familiar hum of their apartment, once a comforting rhythm, now felt like the prelude to a storm. It happened on a blustery Tuesday, just as Lena was returning from school, her small backpack laden with books and a drawing of a smiling sun. A commotion stirred in the communal courtyard. A sleek black car, ostentatious and out of place, idled by the building entrance. Standing imperiously beside it was Mr. Silas Blackwood, the building's landlord, a man whose expensive suit always seemed to mock the peeling paint of the complex. He was a portly man, with a perpetually sneering mouth and eyes that held a cold, calculating glint. He clutched a thick stack of papers, his presence radiating a palpable disdain. Amir and Layla, drawn by the unusual noise, emerged from their apartment, their expressions shifting from curiosity to apprehension as they saw Blackwood. He didn't waste a moment. With a theatrical flourish, he unfurled a document, its stark white contrasting sharply with the grim surroundings. "Alani!" he boomed, his voice echoing through the courtyard, drawing the attention of startled neighbors. "This is a formal eviction notice. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises." Layla gasped, clutching Amir's arm. 48 hours? But why? We always pay rent on time. Blackwood's sneer deepened. Regulations, compliance, tenant restructuring, technicalities. The fact is, he added, his voice dropping, laced with a venomous undertone audible only to the Alani family. This building isn't for your kind anymore. We're upgrading, and you, frankly, don't fit the new profile. His gaze swept over their faces, lingering on Layla's headscarf, a look of unmistakable prejudice in his eyes. This sudden, unjust eviction notice, publicly delivered with cruel, racist undertones, was a personalized inciting incident, targeting their fundamental need for stability and safety, striking at the core of their identity as a family seeking a better life. The Alani family's immediate reaction was a profound shock, a cold wave washing over them, followed quickly by a terrifying sense of helplessness. Amir's jaw clenched, his knuckles white as he clenched his fists, struggling with the urge to demand answers, to fight back against the blatant injustice. But the terrifying reality of their limited resources, their vulnerable status as immigrants, weighed heavily. Where would they go? What could they do in 2 days? Layla's eyes welled with tears, but she quickly blinked them back, her hand finding Lena's small one, a silent promise to remain strong for their daughter. Lena, witnessing the cruel display, felt a strange, unfamiliar heat ignite within her. Her innocent understanding of the world, built on fairness and kindness, was suddenly shattered. The unfairness of Blackwood's words, the thinly veiled hatred in his eyes, sparked a quiet, determined defiance in her. She looked at her parents' faces, etched with fear but also a deep, protective love, and a fierce longing for justice, a concept she was too young to fully articulate but felt keenly in her small chest. This unjust eviction, threatening to tear apart their sense of home, ignited a powerful, suppressed longing for stability and truth within them, prompting them to subtly begin looking for unexpected avenues of resistance. Blackwood, clearly enjoying their distress, escalated his harassment. That very evening, the electricity to their apartment flickered, then died, plunging them into darkness. The next morning, a notice appeared on their door, fabricated property violations, trivial issues like a cracked floor tile or a loose faucet, things Blackwood had consistently ignored for other tenants. He even sent a maintenance crew, ostensibly to inspect the apartment, but whose true mission was to intimidate and subtly damage their belongings. He began spreading malicious rumors among other tenants, claiming the Alani family was unsanitary and troublemakers, attempting to isolate them. This concrete, aggressive act made it impossible for the Alani family to simply comply or find another quiet solution. They realized with a chilling certainty that this wasn't just about an eviction, it was a personal vendetta, designed to drive them out. This was their point of no return. Amir, holding the worn brass key from his wooden box, looked at Layla, a new resolve hardening his features. "We cannot just leave," he stated, his voice quiet but firm. "Not like this. Not for them." The quest for answers, for a way to fight back, became unavoidable, pulling them into a conflict that threatened to consume their very existence. Their home, their dignity, and their future were at stake, and they knew, with a dawning awareness, that they would have to find a way to unearth the truth, no matter the cost. The sudden eviction notice and Blackwood's escalating harassment had solidified the Alani family's resolve. The initial fear had begun to transmute into a quiet, burning determination. They would not be driven out. But how to fight a man who wielded power and prejudice like a weapon? The opportunity for an initial confrontation arose a few days later, just hours before their draconian 48-hour deadline. Mr. Silas Blackwood, oozing disdain, arrived at their apartment with two burly men, ostensibly for a final inspection to document damages and ensure their swift departure. His eyes, cold and assessing, swept over the meticulously clean but visibly worn space, searching for any flaw he could exploit. Lena, clutching a well-loved storybook, instinctively pressed herself against Layla's leg, sensing the malevolence in the air. Blackwood puffed out his chest. "I trust your pact, Alani. My men will begin removing your belongings shortly after the deadline. We prefer a clean transition." He smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "This building has a new future, one that doesn't include certain elements." His gaze lingered on Layla's headscarf, a clear, unmistakable flicker of prejudice. Amir, his face a mask of weary composure, knew he couldn't openly defy Blackwood without risking physical removal, but he also knew this was his chance, however slim, to subtly probe, to unveil something that might throw the landlord off balance. He remembered the brass key, the letter, the fleeting memories of whispers from his childhood about an ancestor, a craftsman, tied to the very foundations of the city. He took a deep breath. "Mr. Blackwood," Amir began, his voice calm, surprisingly devoid of anger. "You speak of a new future for this building, but you seem to have forgotten its past, a rich past. I recall my elders speaking of the original craftsmanship, the hidden details. Did you know, for instance, that the old brickwork near the western stairwell, the part that's crumbling now, was originally designed with a unique pattern, a phoenix rising from flames? It signified renewal, or so the story went." Blackwood's confident smirk faltered. He blinked, a flicker of genuine bewilderment crossing his face. His eyes darted towards the mention of the western stairwell, a section of the building he notoriously neglected. He dismissed it with a derisive laugh. "Nonsense! Old wives' tales! This building is a decrepit piece of junk I'm trying to modernize. What would a tenant know of its craftsmanship?" He scoffed, his arrogance returning, but a subtle tremor ran through his hand as he adjusted his cufflink. He saw it as a desperate tenant's trick, a pathetic attempt to stall, reinforcing his prejudice and disdain. Only Mr. Blackwood and Lena witnessed this subtle unveiling. Lena, usually so quiet in the presence of the intimidating landlord, had observed her father's unusual comment. Her small brow furrowed in concentration. "Phoenix," she whispered to herself, the word catching in her mind. She remembered her father often tracing the outline of the mysterious brass key with his thumb, and the faded handwritten letter tucked beside it. Could they be connected? Her young mind began to subtly piece together fragments, an unacknowledged insight sparking a nascent curiosity. She instinctively tightened her grip on her storybook, a silent acknowledgement of the unfolding real-life drama. Following Amir's subtle probe, Silas Blackwood, though outwardly dismissive, felt a prickle of unease. The specific detail of the phoenix motif, so obscure, so irrelevant to a common tenant, disturbed him more than he let on. He was convinced the Alani family was trying to outsmart him, perhaps by fabricating some historical claim to the property. His face, usually a mask of haughty disdain, hardened into a ruthless resolve. He immediately intensified his efforts to discredit and evict them. Within the hour, he was seen speaking animatedly with other tenants, his voice lowered in conspiratorial whispers, spreading malicious rumors about the Alani family being uncooperative and problematic. He fabricated new, egregious property violations, emailing official-looking notices to all residents, subtly implying the Alani family was the root cause of the building's woes. He even called the local housing authority on spurious grounds, claiming the Alani apartment was a fire hazard due to their unusual cooking practices, attempting to use legal and social pressure to ensure their immediate removal. He contacted his attorney, demanding a court order for their swift and forceful eviction, bypassing standard procedures. His actions were no longer just about profit. They were driven by a simmering fear of exposure, not just of his current prejudiced practices, but of a deeper, unspoken insecurity about his own claim to the building's legitimate ownership. He knew the building's convoluted history, the whispers of a lost will and rightful heirs. He suspected Amir's casual comment was a veiled threat, a sign that the Alani family somehow knew more than they should about the building's true lineage. This escalation solidified Blackwood as a ruthless, Type A antagonist, a pure villain willing to go to extreme lengths to maintain his ill-gotten power and suppress any challenge to his authority. The conflict was no longer merely an eviction. It was a desperate battle for truth and ownership, with the Alani family unwittingly stepping onto a battlefield where their very heritage was at stake. The final eviction notice, gleaming with a chilling finality, had been served for tomorrow. Silas Blackwood's legal team, a formidable phalanx of sharp-suited lawyers, had ensured every loophole was closed, every avenue of appeal meticulously blocked. The Alani family, standing on the precipice of homelessness, felt the icy grip of despair. Yet within that despair, a fierce protective determination burned. They had 24 hours. Blackwood, eager to revel in their imminent defeat and solidify his control, had called a tenant and property ownership meeting in the building's communal hall for the following morning. It was a thinly veiled public execution, a symbolic arena where he intended to finalize the Alani family's removal and parade his absolute authority. He wanted witnesses, an audience to his triumph, stamping their undesirability into the very fabric of the community. He planned to announce sweeping renovations, justifying the previous evictions, and painting himself as the benevolent modernizer. In their small apartment, the air was thick with tension. Amir sat at the kitchen table, the faded handwritten letter spread before him, the tarnished brass key beside it. He had spent sleepless nights poring over the cryptic script, a language he vaguely remembered from his grandmother's lullabies, a dialect of their ancestral homeland. Layla, her usual composure strained, packed their meager belongings into worn suitcases, each item a testament to their tenuous existence. Lena, sensing the gravity of the situation, sat quietly, clutching her storybook, her eyes darting between her parents' grim faces and the mysterious key. The Alani family stood largely alone. Their sympathetic neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, had offered kind words and a small, hoarded bag of cookies, but her frail health prevented any active assistance. Their overworked legal aid lawyer, Mr. Davies, had tried his best, but Blackwood's legal maneuvers were too swift, too powerful. "I'm sorry, Amir," Davies had said over the phone, his voice heavy with resignation. "He's got every angle covered. Unless you have some impossible last-minute proof of ownership, there's nothing more I can do through official channels." The core emotional and evidentiary battle, unveiling their legacy and confronting Blackwood's illegitimacy, was solely theirs. They had to rely on their own courage, the cryptic clues of the past, and Lena's nascent understanding. The time pressure was immense. The meeting was set for 10 a.m. Blackwood's lawyers had subtly interfered with their attempts to contact other former tenants who might have known something of the building's original history. Phone calls went unanswered, emails bounced back. It was a calculated chokehold, designed to ensure the Alani family arrived at the arena with no ammunition, no defense. The dramatic irony hung heavy in the air. The other tenants and the local media, anticipating a routine meeting about building management, were oblivious to the seismic revelation that awaited them. Amir traced the elegant script on the letter, a series of symbols that hinted at something grander than just a personal note. He remembered a story his grandmother used to tell, a children's rhyme about the founder's mark and the hidden truth within the walls. He glanced at the brass key, its peculiar shape almost like a stylized letter, or perhaps a part of a larger design. "Papa," Lena whispered, her small voice cutting through the silence. "The key. It looks like the drawing in my storybook. The one about the secret garden. The one with the special lock." She held up a tattered page, pointing to an illustration of an ornate, almost fantastical key. Amir looked at the drawing, then back at his own key. A spark ignited in his mind. The key. The letter. The phoenix rising from flames detail he had mentioned to Blackwood, which had unnerved the landlord so much. Could they all be connected to the building itself? Not just a general history, but a deeply personal, hidden legacy. He remembered his grandmother mentioning the original owner of the complex, a distant relative, a visionary architect who had designed the entire block. He had heard whispers of a family disagreement, a lost will, but it had always seemed like ancient history, a fairy tale. Now, with Blackwood's relentless persecution, the fairy tale felt chillingly real. He thought of the building's old grand entrance lobby, specifically a large built-in display case near the main doors. It was always empty, dusty, covered by a faded cloth. Blackwood had dismissed it as a relic, a space for old trophies. But what if it was more? "Layla," Amir said, his voice quiet but urgent. "The letter. And the key. We need to go to the main lobby now. We might be able to find something. Something about the original owner." Layla looked at him, fear still in her eyes, but a flicker of hope beginning to stir. Lena, already on her feet, clutching the storybook, felt a surge of excitement. The clock was ticking, the eviction looming, but a desperate final plan was forming. They would walk into Blackwood's arena, not as condemned tenants, but as truth-seekers, ready to unearth a hidden legacy that would shake the foundations of his power. The morning would not just be an eviction, it would be a revelation. The communal hall, usually a drab space for mundane tenant notices, buzzed with an expectant hum. Silas Blackwood, resplendent in a tailored suit, stood at the makeshift podium, a smirk playing on his lips. Beside him, his legal team hovered like dark shadows, their briefcases clutched tightly. Rows of tenants, some curious, some sympathetic, filled the folding chairs, eager for the morning's spectacle. Blackwood cleared his throat, enjoying the hushed anticipation. He intended to deliver the final, crushing blow to the Alani family, to publicly sever their ties to his complex, and solidify his absolute dominion. Amir and Layla stood at the back of the room, their faces etched with a desperate resolve. Lena, clutching her storybook and the old brass key, stood between them, a tiny figure bristling with an unfamiliar determination. They were the main act in Blackwood's play, the condemned ready for their public shaming. "Good morning, esteemed residents," Blackwood began, his voice oily smooth. "We are here today to discuss the exciting future of this complex, and regrettably, to finalize the departure of certain uncooperative tenants." His eyes flicked to the Alani family, a cruel glint in their depths. The Alani family, despite our generous offers, has refused to vacate. Therefore, this meeting serves as their final notice. Effective immediately, they are no longer residents of this property. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some tenants shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared challenge Blackwood. This was the bated breath moment for the Alani family. The legal team, meanwhile, presented what appeared to be irrefutable paperwork, all signed and sealed, confirming the eviction order. Blackwood leaned into the microphone, a triumphant sneer spreading across his face. "Unless," he drawled, "the Alani family has some miraculous, last-minute objection, some long-lost deed, perhaps." He chuckled, a patronizing sound that grated on Amir's ears. Amir stepped forward, Layla and Lena by his side. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, his voice trembling slightly but firm. "We do. We have an objection, and it is based on the truth of this building's history, a truth you have long suppressed." He held up the faded, handwritten letter. "This letter, passed down through my family, speaks of a legacy tied to the very foundations of this complex." Blackwood scoffed. "More fairy tales? We're wasting time. Security." He waved a dismissive hand, and two hulking guards began to move towards the Alani family. "Wait!" Lena's small voice, surprisingly clear and strong, cut through the growing commotion. She stepped forward, the brass key clutched in her hand. "Papa, the key, the secret garden book, it's the same." She held up the storybook, pointing to the illustration of the ornate key. "And the phoenix, it's on the old wall near the main entrance." Amir's eyes widened. Lena's words sparked a frantic thought. The main lobby. The old dusty display case Blackwood had always ignored. He had dismissed it as a relic, a space for old trophies. But what if? "The display case, Mr. Blackwood," Amir exclaimed, his voice ringing out. The one in the main lobby. It's not just a display. It's a vault. A vault built by the original owner, my ancestor. He was a master craftsman, a man who believed in embedding secrets within his creations. Blackwood's face went pale. His eyes darted nervously. He knew about the rumors, the whispers of a hidden vault, a trust, but he had dismissed them as urban legends. He had meticulously avoided that specific display case, fearing what it might contain. Nonsense! There's nothing there but dust. This is a desperate charade, he roared, but a tremor in his voice betrayed his rising fear. Guards! Remove them! As the guards advanced, Lena, with a sudden burst of courage, darted past them towards the lobby entrance. The Phoenix! It's part of the lock, she cried. She pointed to a barely visible, stylized Phoenix emblem carved into the wooden frame of the old display case, perfectly camouflaged against the dark wood. It was the same Phoenix Amir had mentioned, the symbol of the very firm Blackwood had, years ago, subtly taken down to acquire the land. The key fits here, she urged, her small fingers tracing the outline of the bird. Amir, galvanized by Lena's intuition, pushed past the bewildered guards. He rushed to the display case, pulling out the worn brass key. It was unusually shaped, and with a slight twist, he found the hidden keyhole, perfectly integrated into the Phoenix motif. He inserted the key. With a soft click, a small section of the display case slid open, revealing not dust, but a tightly sealed, tarnished metal box. A collective gasp swept through the hall. Blackwood stared, his jaw slack, his face now a sickly shade of green. Amir, his hands trembling, opened the box. Inside, nestled on ancient, brittle velvet, lay a meticulously preserved set of documents. The original, hand-drawn blueprints of the entire complex, detailed architectural plans, and, most importantly, a sealed, authenticated last will and testament. He pulled out the will, its aged parchment crackling. This, Amir announced, his voice clear and ringing with triumphant authority, is the will of Omar Alani, the original architect and founder of this entire complex, dated 1905. It states unequivocally that upon the passing of his last direct descendant, if no other heir is found, the property and all its holdings are to revert to the care of the eldest surviving member of the Alani family lineage, to be used for the communal good of its residents, not for private profit. He looked directly at Blackwood, his eyes blazing with a fierce, quiet power. And Mr. Blackwood, I am that eldest surviving member. My grandmother was Omar Alani's great-granddaughter. The lineage has been broken, lost to time and migration, but never extinguished. The revelation was a hammer blow. The entire hall erupted in a cacophony of shouts, gasps, and frantic whispers. Blackwood, utterly defeated, stood frozen, his eyes wide with a profound, abject terror. He had not only been exposed as a fraudulent landlord, but the family he had so cruelly targeted were, in fact, the rightful owners of everything he coveted. His entire world, built on lies and exploitation, had just imploded. The other tenants, initially skeptical and pitying, were now overcome with awe and a surge of furious understanding. From silent observers, their faces transitioned to dawning outrage at Blackwood's deception, then to overwhelming admiration and support for the Alani family. A ripple of applause began at the back of the room, growing into a thunderous ovation. The vindication was absolute, confirming the Alani family's victory not just as a personal triumph, but as a profound public recognition of justice and the enduring power of a long-suppressed truth. Silas Blackwood, the racist landlord, had become nothing more than a defeated, terrified man, stripped of his power, exposed for the villain he truly was. The communal hall, moments ago a stage for Silas Blackwood's twisted theatrics, now reverberated with the raw energy of his spectacular downfall. His face, a sickly canvas of disbelief and terror, contorted as the full weight of Amir's revelation crashed down on him. The laughter, the jeers, the furious murmurs of the tenants. It was a symphony of his undoing, played out in the very space he had sought to dominate. Blackwood stumbled back from the podium, his legs giving out, collapsing into a chair. He stared at the ancient will in Amir's hand, then at the brass key Lena still clutched, symbols of a legacy he had so carelessly dismissed and so ruthlessly tried to erase. His grand performance had backfired, transforming him from an imperious landlord into a humiliated fraud. The room erupted. Tenants surged forward, their initial awe at the Alani family's courage quickly turning to righteous anger against Blackwood. Shouts of fraud and "get him out" filled the air. News cameras, which had arrived expecting a routine eviction story, now swiveled to capture every agonizing moment of Blackwood's public disintegration. Within minutes the sirens wailed, not a distant mournful sound, but a sharp, insistent presence drawing closer. Uniformed police officers and plainclothes detectives, alerted by Mr. Davies and some of the more sympathetic tenants who had glimpsed the unfolding drama, swarmed into the hall. "Silas Blackwood," a lead detective announced, his voice stern, "you are under arrest for multiple counts of fraud, discriminatory housing practices, and illegal property dealings. We have enough evidence, including this will," he gestured towards the parchment in Amir's hand, "to begin a full investigation into your entire operation." Blackwood let out a strangled cry, a pathetic whimper from a man who had thought himself untouchable. He tried to resist, to bluster, to claim conspiracy, but he was quickly subdued and led away in handcuffs, his expensive suit now seeming to hang limp on his defeated frame. His public reputation was irrevocably shattered, his carefully constructed empire of lies crumbling to dust. This marked the swift and decisive downfall of Silas Blackwood, the pure villain. His ill-gotten gains from the complex would be seized, and a full legal investigation would ensure he faced justice commensurate with his crimes. For the Alani family, the immediate aftermath was a blur of legal discussions and grateful, tearful embraces from their neighbors. But once the chaos subsided, a profound sense of calm and overwhelming relief settled over them. They weren't just homeowners, they were the rightful custodians of a legacy. The most significant new opportunity that unfolded was far more than just financial. The Alani family officially assumed ownership of the entire building complex. This wasn't merely a transfer of deeds, it was a profound shift in their destiny. Their long-held dream of stability and belonging was realized in the most unexpected and powerful way. They now had the power to implement their own ethical, compassionate management, transforming the neglected complex into a thriving, supportive community for all residents. Days later, Amir, Layla, and Lena stood in the main lobby, which no longer felt like a place of dread. The old display case, now cleaned and illuminated, proudly showcased the original blueprints, the will, and the polished brass key. The phoenix motif gleamed, a symbol of their unexpected rebirth. "Papa," Lena whispered, gazing at the old documents, "does this mean we finally have a home that no one can take away?" Amir knelt, wrapping his arms around her. "More than that, little bird," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This means we have a community we can make better, a place where everyone belongs." Layla, watching them, smiled through her tears. "It was a long journey," she murmured, looking at Amir. "So many fears, so many struggles, we almost gave up." Amir reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "We didn't. Because we had each other. And because the truth, in the end, always finds a way." Their reflective dialogue, quiet and deeply emotional, reinforced the family's incredible growth, their transition from vulnerable immigrants clinging to hope to empowered property owners ready to build a compassionate future. They spoke of the resilience they discovered within themselves and the profound lessons learned about the insidious nature of prejudice and the enduring power of truth and community. The new calm was not the absence of ripples, but the deeper, more profound peace that comes from embracing a full, authentic truth, even when it demands arduous struggles and unexpected revelations. The journey of rebuilding was just beginning, but it was a journey taken with open hearts and a newfound understanding of their rightful place in the world. 2 years later, the Alani family's building complex, once a symbol of neglect and struggle, had transformed into a vibrant testament to community and compassion. The peeling paint was gone, replaced by cheerful hues, and the crumbling facade now boasted thriving window boxes overflowing with flowers. The once drab communal hall, the very arena of their triumph, buzzed with laughter from children's art classes and the murmur of residents sharing stories over steaming cups of tea. The old, dusty display case in the lobby now proudly showcased the original blueprints, the authenticated will, and a beautifully polished version of the brass key, gleaming under a warm spotlight. It was a tangible record of their journey, a visible promise of the future. The Alani family, far from being just landlords, had become the beloved heart of the community. Amir, with his quiet strength and innate kindness, oversaw the complex's ethical management, ensuring fair rents and prompt repairs. Layla, her creativity blossoming, organized communal events, from potluck dinners to skill-sharing workshops, fostering a deep sense of belonging among the diverse residents. Lena, now 10, a bright and confident young girl, embodied the future of compassionate leadership. She often helped her parents, eagerly explaining the building's history to new tenants, her small fingers tracing the phoenix emblem on the polished key, a symbol she now fully understood. The Alani family had wholeheartedly embraced the concept of paying it forward. They established the Alani Community Fund, a non-profit organization that provided affordable housing and legal aid to other immigrant families facing discrimination or unjust evictions. They mentored new small business owners within the complex, offering reduced rents and a supportive network. Their personal struggle and triumph had bloomed into a profound legacy of compassion and equity, ensuring that no family in their community would suffer as they once had. One crisp autumn evening, the Alani family stood on the newly renovated rooftop garden of their thriving complex. Below them, the lights of the city twinkled, a vast tapestry of lives. Laughter drifted up from the courtyard where children played, their voices carrying on the gentle breeze. The garden itself was a miniature oasis, filled with fragrant herbs and twinkling fairy lights, a shared space where tenants gathered to talk, to relax, and to simply be. Lena held the gleaming brass key in her hand, its surface cool and smooth. She looked at her parents, then out at the sprawling complex, now a beacon of hope in the city skyline. "It feels like the building is breathing, Papa," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. Amir wrapped an arm around Layla, pulling Lena close. "It is, little bird," he said, his voice soft, filled with a deep contentment. "It's breathing with new life, with truth, and with love." Layla leaned her head against Amir's shoulder, a serene smile on her face. The journey had been arduous, fraught with fear and uncertainty, but they had endured. And now, they stood on the very ground that had once threatened to consume them, transforming it into a testament to their resilience. The key in Lena's hand, once a mysterious relic, was now a vibrant symbol of secure home and compassionate ownership, reflecting the moonlight and the vibrant life that now filled the once neglected complex. It was their second spring, a season of renewal, rooted deeply in justice and community, finally blooming in full, glorious color. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.